They weren't fancy, but they never let anyone go hungry. These forgotten poor man's dinners were scraped together with grit, creativity, and whatever was left in the pantry. They fed families through the toughest times, the Great Depression, wartime rationing, and economic hardships that tested American resilience. These meals aren't just about survival, they tell stories of ingenuity, community, and making something special out of almost nothing. And in today's world of rising grocery prices and busy schedules, these humble dishes might just be what your wallet and schedule need. Creamed chipped beef on toast, SOS. If you've ever had a military veteran in your family, chances are they've mentioned SOS. Same old stuff, or something a bit more colourful. Creamed chipped beef on toast became a staple during World War II when meat was rationed and dried beef was plentiful. The military served it so often that soldiers brought it home after the war, making this couldn't be simpler. Just dried beef. In a white sauce poured over toast, the dried beef gets rehydrated in the creamy sauce, and suddenly you've got a filling meal that costs next to nothing. What made this dish survive wasn't just its price tag, but its ability to fill you up and keep you going all day. Back in the 1940s and 50s, a whole meal of this would cost just pennies per serving, and it would become a comfort food that crossed generations. Many folks I've talked to remember their grandparents making this on cold mornings before school or work. It's one of those dishes that carries memories along with its practical value. Bread and milk. Sometimes the simplest foods are the most meaningful. Bread and milk, just torn bread in a bowl with warm milk poured over, sustained countless children through America's hardest economic times. Some families would add a sprinkle of sugar or cinnamon if they had it, turning necessity into a treat. This wasn't just economical, it was also about using every bit of available food. Stale bread that couldn't be eaten normally would soften in the warm milk. Nothing went to waste when every penny counted. For many elderly Americans today, this dish remains a comfort food that reminds them of childhood. What's interesting is how this simple combination crossed cultures and generations. From Italian zuppa di latte to British milk sop, variations of this dish have nourished people across continents and centuries. Sometimes the humblest foods have the longest histories: beans and cornbread. In the American South and Appalachia, beans and cornbread wasn't just a meal, it was a way of life. Dried beans cost almost nothing, stored indefinitely, and provided essential protein and fiber. Paired with cornbread made from locally ground corn, this combination became the backbone of survival during the toughest times. The beauty of beans and cornbread was in its versatility. Pinto beans, navy beans, black-eyed peas, whatever was available could form the base. The beans would simmer all day, perhaps with a ham hock or bacon end if you were lucky, or just salt and pepper if you weren't. Cornbread provided the perfect complement, requiring just cornmeal, a bit of fat, and some baking soda. Together they created a complete protein that could sustain hard physical labor. Even today, this combination remains a cultural touchstone and budget-friendly meal that costs just dollars to feed a family. Potato soup before fancy loaded. Potato soups became restaurant fare. Simple potato soup was survival food. Potatoes have always been affordable, filling, and nutritious, a trifecta that made them invaluable during economic hardship. The most basic version required just potatoes, water, salt, and perhaps an onion. If milk was available, it would be added for richness. The potatoes would break down as they cooked, naturally thickening the broth without any need for flour or cream. What made potato soup special was how it could be adapted based on what was available. A bit of bacon grease for flavor in good times, just salt and pepper in lean times. This adaptability made it a cornerstone of frugal cooking from Irish immigrants during the 1800s through the Great Depression and beyond. Even today, a pot of potato soup remains one of the most economical ways. Ham bone soup. Nothing demonstrated the waste not, want not philosophy better than ham bone soup. After a holiday, ham was enjoyed, often the only meat splurge many families could afford. The bone with bits of meat clinging to it would become the foundation for meals that could feed a family for days. The ham bone would simmer with dried beans, peas or whatever vegetables were available, creating a rich broth infused with smoky flavor. The small bits of meat would fall off during cooking, distributing throughout the soup. This approach transformed what might have been thrown away into the star ingredient of a new meal. This practice wasn't just economical, it was profoundly nutritious. The long simmering of the bone extracted calcium and other minerals, while the marrow added richness and vital nutrients. Our ancestors instinctively understood what science has now confirmed. Bone broth contains compounds that support overall health. Cornmeal mush. Before boxed cereals dominated breakfast, many Americans started their day with cornmeal mush, a simple porridge made from cornmeal cooked in water or milk until thick. What made this dish remarkable was its versatility. It could be served hot with butter or molasses for breakfast, or cooled, sliced, and fried for dinner. The economics were unbeatable. A few cents worth of cornmeal could fill many bellies. During the Depression, government relief programs often distributed cornmeal to struggling families precisely because it could be stretched so effectively. For many elderly Americans today, the smell of cornmeal cooking still evokes powerful childhood memories. What's fascinating is how this humble dish connects to global food traditions, from Italian polenta to southern grits to Romanian mamaliga. Across cultures and continents, people discovered that this simple preparation of ground corn could sustain life through the hardest times. Egg gravy. When meat was scarce or unaffordable, egg gravy provided protein and comfort in a form that felt like a treat rather than deprivation. The technique was simple but ingenious. Eggs were scrambled directly into a basic flour gravy, creating a rich, protein-packed sauce that could be poured over biscuits, bread, or potatoes. This dish emerged from Southern cooking traditions but spread nationwide during the Depression and World War II rationing periods. A family with chickens could produce this protein-rich meal even when meat was unavailable or too expensive. The adaptability was key. It could be made richer or plainer depending on what dairy was available. Food historians note that egg gravy represents the clever adaptation of traditional cooking techniques to meet the challenges of scarcity. The same roux-based approach used for meat gravies was repurposed with eggs as the protein, allowing families to maintain familiar food traditions even in hard times. Hobo stew. Born from necessity during the Great Depression, hobo stew represents the ultimate in adaptable cooking, using whatever ingredients were available to create a filling, nutritious, one-pot meal. Named after the transient workers who perfected this approach, the stew typically combined small amounts of meat, if available, with any vegetables that could be found, foraged, or grown. The defining characteristic wasn't specific ingredients, but the technique, everything cooked together in a single pot, often over an open fire, until flavors melded and even tough ingredients became tender. This approach required minimal equipment, perfect for those without permanent kitchens during the hardest years of the Depression. What makes hobo stew historically significant is how it represents the massive population displacement during the 1930s, when unemployment sent thousands of people on the road looking for work. These traveling job seekers developed cooking techniques that required minimal equipment and could utilize whatever ingredients were available or affordable in different regions. Potato pancakes. Across European immigrant communities in America, potato pancakes became a go-to meal when meat was unaffordable. From Jewish latkes to German Kartoffelpuffer to Irish boxty, variations of this dish sustained families through countless economic downturns. The brilliance of potato pancakes lies in their simplicity. Grated potatoes mixed with just enough flour and egg to bind them, then fried until crispy. The high starch content of potatoes creates a naturally satisfying texture, while the crispy exterior makes them feel special despite their humble ingredients. During the Depression and subsequent hard times, potato pancakes allowed families to serve filling meals without meat several times a week. Records show that potato consumption increased dramatically during economic downturns precisely because recipes like this transformed the affordable vegetable into meals that felt complete and satisfying. Water pie. perhaps no recipe better, demonstrates human creativity in the face of scarcity than water pie. When fruit and other traditional pie fillings were unaffordable luxuries, inventive cooks created a silky, custard-like pie using water as the primary ingredient, along with sugar, flour, butter, and vanilla if available. The science behind this. Pie is fascinating. The combination of sugar, butter, and flour creates a thickened filling during baking that mimics the texture of more expensive ingredients. Depression-era cookbook collections contain numerous variations of this recipe, showing how widely it was adopted during the 1930s. What makes water pie particularly remarkable is how it represents the psychological aspect of cooking during hard times, the determination to create moments of normalcy and small pleasures, even when ingredients were severely limited. Having dessert, even one made primarily from water, maintained family traditions and provided comfort during extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Bean sandwiches. When meat for sandwiches was unaffordable, bean sandwiches provided protein and substance in a portable form. Usually made with mashed beans, whatever variety was available, seasoned simply and spread between bread, these sandwiches became common lunch fare during the Depression and subsequent periods of economic hardship. The beauty of bean sandwiches was their adaptability. They could be as simple as plain mashed beans with salt and pepper, or enhanced with onions, pickle relish, or a bit of cheese when available. The texture of mashed beans created a satisfying sandwich filling that could fuel a day of hard physical labor. Food historians note that bean sandwiches represent a significant adaptation in American eating habits during the Depression. The need to create filling, portable lunches for workers and schoolchildren when traditional sandwich meats were too expensive. This pragmatic approach to nutrition helped families maintain energy and health during extraordinarily challenging economic times. Mayonnaise biscuits. When eggs and milk were scarce or needed for other purposes, innovative cooks discovered that mayonnaise could replace both in biscuit recipes. This clever substitution emerged during WFT rationing when dairy products were limited, but commercial mayonnaise remained more accessible. The technique is remarkably simple. Mayonnaise provides both the fat and moisture needed for tender biscuits, mixed with just flour and a bit of baking powder. These biscuits paired with nearly any meal, adding satisfying carbohydrates to stretch small portions of other foods further. What makes this recipe historically significant is how it represents the increasing role of commercial products in home cooking during the mid-20th century. As manufactured foods became more widely available, home cooks incorporated them in creative ways to solve the persistent challenges of feeding families economically, a pattern that continues to shape American cooking today. These forgotten meals tell stories of resilience, creativity, and making the most of what's available. They remind us that good food doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. In today's world of rising grocery prices and busy schedules, these humble recipes might be exactly what we need. If you found value in rediscovering these forgotten meals, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that connects us to our shared food history. Let me know in the comments which of these dishes you remember or might try at home. Sometimes the best solutions to today's challenges can be found in yesterday's wisdom.